So let's get started. Chris, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so let's call the meeting to order at 6:02. And Chris is going to be our minute taker. So that'll move us right to public comment. Is there any public comment? If you have a public comment and you're on Zoom, if you want to raise your electronic hand. Nope. Hi, Liz. All right. Not seeing any hands. All right, we'll move on. Okay. Our next item is to approve the consent agenda, and that has the minutes from the 125 and the 2/8 meetings. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move it, Andrew.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Steve.
All right. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, give me a thumbs up or an eye or some. All right. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that one passes. Okay. So now we're going to move down to board management and governance. Tonight, we're going to take some time to continue our discussion from last week with the goal of identifying some next steps. So I'm asking for help from all of you to work hard to keep our conversation moving forward. Tonight, we will focus primarily on one topic, with the goal of making this a very focused and productive meeting and not go on for an indefinite amount of time. So Nate has put it in his report that we can be bold, thoughtful, and humane in how we move forward. Our priorities are to make MAUSD more financially viable while doing what is best for kids and keeps taxes affordable. We also believe we have good options for achieving these goals without closing any elementary schools, which is of great importance to our community. So based on these priorities and conversations with Nate and his team about how we might move forward, Krista and I proposed the 2 action items that you see after the discussion period. These are things that we believe we can and should do now to get us towards our goals. So first, we'll spend about 30 minutes discussing our general thoughts on the Levinson report and using that last slide from the JAM board to guide us. And then we'll move into our action items. So Andrew, do you have that copy of the JAM board that you can edit that I sent?
And that's your meeting preparation email.
Yes.
I can open it right now. Yes.
Could I call on you to capture people's thoughts? You did a really great job of getting a concise statement out there the last time we were doing this.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna make sure I'm on the right page. You want me whole group discussion page? Is that where you want me?
Let me check out which one I have open. Yes, that's the page.
Okay.
Great. And then let's see. I need a timekeeper, somebody who's going to keep us on task with the time. Liz, will you be willing to do that? Excellent. Thank you. All right. So now if everybody had the slides to look at to refresh your memory, if we go back to that last slide and we start adding some thoughts. Is there somebody who would like to go first, or do you just want me to call on you? All right, I'm going to call on you. I'll start with Steve. Have you got that slide open? So what was heard, questions raised, possible actions, next steps? Is there anything? We don't have to stick to one. If you want to fill in a particular answer, just let us know and let's go capture some of it.
Yeah, fortunately, I went to the drive and opened up the other version, so I'm just trying to browse to the one you included in your email.
Oh, there you are. And Andrew will just capture it, and so that we only have one person posting if you want to.
Okay. Well, I'd have to say my basic feeling after reviewing everything is that it doesn't appear that there is an immediate need to take immediate action. You know, we've been given a little bit of a reprieve by the state, which some people suspected might happen. And we're not exactly sure what's going to happen even next year and the year after that. So I think we do have time to take steps that are prudent but not drastic. We have time to narrow down our projections based upon new information as it comes along. So I think the phased approach is obviously a good thing. And having, you know, one of the things that I proposed in my questions to Nate was to have some kind of a cheat sheet where we could say, all right, in the next 2 years, it looks like we're going to get hit by X and Y, or this is in our favor and that's in our favor. And the tools that have been identified have an X value, and which of those do we want to apply in the next budget cycle or two to get us where we want to go. And I know Nate's response to that was, you know, set the goal of where you want to be in 2 or 3 years, and you know, and develop a path towards that. So I think the community has basically said we want obviously all the tools explored that don't include closing elementary schools. So having a good analysis of what those other tools are and putting those up against what the real projections are as we move along, I think is one of the tasks in front of us.
All right. Great. Thank you. Okay. All right. Next on my screen is Kevin.
I understand taking advantage of time and working things out. And certainly there are things in that report that if you look at all the green things, which to me are all go-dos, they take time. And I wouldn't necessarily sit back and wait for the crunch to look for dollar savings. I would look at those green items, if you will, and look at the merit and start implementing them. There are things like moving the 6th grade to middle school, which, given the time frame that we've got right now, if that's strategic, it could take 2-3 years to fully implement that in a way that's not overly disruptive. The same thing goes for the merger study committee. That seems like something that's necessary for the longer term, and it may take a few years to work that, even if the committee's merge, even if the merge goes forward, to combine the 2 districts into 1 district will take multiple years. So I think we need to be strategic and not look at the gotta do, but how we plan out to comfortably do these things with the least amount of disruption, and have a vision as to how to dovetail that in to be successful before we have to do it.
All right. Thank you. Just give a couple seconds, minutes. Yep, Andrew's got it up there. All right. Andrew, you happen to be the next one.
I actually found the report so comprehensive that I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around where to start. But I guess what I'm really interested in hearing is I'm interested in hearing from Patrick, like what's a reasonable sequence from a day-to-day operation standpoint that could be put in place that sort of achieves all the things that we were looking for. It's just sort of a high-level overview from Patrick about how that could look over the next several years, because there are so many pieces to this that they all sound good, and I'm trying to figure out how to plug them all together. I looked at the report today and reread it again. There's just so much there. So I guess I would like to hear from Patrick, since he has, I'm sure, a lot of thoughts on what he's seen.
All right, thank you. Next, I see Sandy.
Hey, Don. I'm looking back at the sticky notes that we did also at the last meeting. I would mirror what Andrew said. One of my thoughts was I was a little overwhelmed in a good way, I think, with the information we got in the report, because it is so comprehensive and I'm still digesting it. And I would also agree that some guidance from Patrick would be helpful to understand from his expertise, his thoughts about the various components. I do like the action items, just to jump ahead, that are on the agenda today and last week. I think that's a good way. We'll get there to give the superintendent direction, at least a good starting point. I like the phased approach in terms of flexibility. And I think it helps us start down a path, at least, to try to figure out what are good next steps.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, Erin, you're next on my screen.
So I guess the only real thing that I have been kind of going over in my mind is that the big draw I had from the report was like coming up with some overarching vision of what MAUSD is and where we're going. And I don't have a sense of that yet, of like, this is where we're headed, so that there's a goal and then we can make those actionable changes, sort of like what Andrew was alluding to. Like, there are so many parts that could be useful and could be good and could save money and all the things, but until we have this sort of idea of why we're doing those things, I just don't know how we're gonna make it all make sense. So that was my big thing, was just making sure that we do have a really good vision of what we want it to look like before we're putting in steps.
Okay, thank you, Erin. Okay. Next is Rob.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry. I always have to ask. I never trust these headphones. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, big picture, a couple things stand out, and maybe more from his presentation. I thought Nate, one of his slides, he sort of said, all right, here's something that you guys should really chew on as a board. Is it 5 elementary schools with the cost, effective mindset, or is it consolidated elementary schools? And I think as a board, personally, that we need to just come forward and say, we're going to move forward with 5 elementary schools. We're going to focus on a cost-effective mindset. We're going to do our best to think about what community schools could look like in those elementary schools. We can talk about revenue and trying to find other ways to bring money into the district, which is great, dollars and cents. I think we could maybe do that in some of our elementary schools, but I also think there's revenue of goodwill, and we need to do a better job as a board. And I think opening up our elementary schools to this idea of a community school will create revenue of goodwill. I think it could be a draw to folks maybe wanting to move or move back or stay within our district. I think we need to just put that on a roadmap. We're moving forward long term with 5 elementary schools. I think at the end of the day, you know, the noise I hear in the back of my head really is around the merger study committee. Having sat on a couple meetings and watched a couple meetings, and hearing from community members, I think as a board, a next step, we need to advocate that, you know, if there's a merger, our district is advocating that we maintain 5 elementary schools, and that there is a way in the articles of agreement that a town would have a vote whether or not their elementary school is open or closed. I think that's imperative right now, moving forward, personally. And a couple other things. I think the phased approach, I really appreciate that in thinking about, you know, where can we find some savings and improve some outcomes within our own district before we decide to sort of say, hey, we're jumping ship and go into a full-on merger. You know, a full merger of governance. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me at the moment, because anything we put in place now could be overrun or overruled, if you will, by a new board, a new superintendent within a couple of years, at the pace that the merger study has been proposed. And so I just, you know, I think we need to have a conversation. Like, you know, I didn't really realize I was signing up for what I signed up for when I voted yes for a 706. And I don't think this report necessarily says that you have to go that route. I think it points to that there are good options in considering, you know, joining forces with Addison Northwest. But to double down on a smaller board for a bigger area is only going to cause, I think, more strife that we've already felt within our district. So, you know, that's noise in the background of how I read this report. I think there's great opportunity both internally and externally, you know, and Nate lays that out. I think, you know, Patrick working with the building leaders and folks to really think about, you know, the cost-effective mindset. And then I think, you know, we have a lot of work as a board, reaching out to our communities and asking them, you know, look, like what would you like to see as we move forward? There's going to probably have to be some changes, and here's what we're considering, and here are the reasons why. But what makes the most sense to you all also? Yeah, I think that's, you know, there's a lot of big numbers, and I haven't dove into the weeds, and I don't know if I have the bandwidth or even that's above my pay grade. But, you know, when you look at where we could find some savings, big number savings, you know, there's almost $6 million in savings that he presents when he moves through G1 all the way through G22. And, you know, half of that is with merging, and the other half actually isn't. And so that's a lot of money that we can save, even without necessarily merging fully, in my opinion. So I would love to, you know, hear more about the moving sixth graders into what would be a middle school, from both, you know, the building leaders. Obviously there's, you know, there's research out there. You can find anything that it's a great thing to have a standalone middle school, and maybe it's not the best. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at right now. I'm glad we went through this process, and I think now we even have more work to do. So that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Rob. Liz, you're next.
I think I really need to understand what a cost-effective mindset means. And so that's why I'm excited about our action items. A cost-effective mindset and saving money and cutting positions and doing things like that is somewhat counterintuitive in my mind when I hear people wanting services and the things that our community members need and ask for and want from their schools and expect from their schools, and families and staff as well, and what they expect for support at work as well. And so I very much so look forward to finding out what a cost-effective mindset looks like. That is more so than we already have, and then getting some really good community and staff feedback about that.
All right, thank you, Liz. Next on my screen is Dave.
Thank you. So I agree with most of what Rob has said. So I think it's way past time for us to put to bed the notion that we're going to close some schools. And we ought to come out strongly and clearly that we're going to operate all 5 elementary schools. And connected directly to that is figuring out how. And that's a nice word set to say cost effectively, but that's got to play out with staff and facilities and students and all kinds of stuff that the superintendent and the leadership needs to figure out. And so I think it's imperative that we move forward on what it means to operate all 5 schools in a cost-effective manner. I'm pretty neutral at the moment on 6th grade. I feel also that we need to be strongly and clearly enumerate what the possible costs to our district are if Lincoln's no longer part of our school district. I think there's a vast misunderstanding. We could end up with 0 Lincoln students coming to MAUSD. To fantasize that it's going to be 70 or 85 or 95 or 50 or whatever percent is complete pure conjecture. And the new Lincoln board could in fact have an arrangement where 0 Lincoln students come to our district. We ought to be clear on what those impacts are to our cost at the Mount Abe Middle and High School, and we ought to do it before there's an election voting for towns to approve Lincoln leaving. I think with the merger, I think we need to be clear. My memory, which is a bit unclear in the minutes, I've done some research in the minutes. My memory is that we specifically expected broader consideration from the merger study committee for alternate ways of collaborating other than a unified district, maybe along the lines of what we currently do with sports teams, or maybe along the lines of what we do with the tech center. But there clearly are ways to collaborate with Addison Northwest that do not involve a unified district. And the merger committee has ruled out looking at any of those things. And I think our board ought to be clear about the fact that we expected them to explore those alternatives. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Kristen Blanchette was here, but I'm not seeing her now. So, all right, Kristen Blanchette, are you still here? Nope. All right, I'm not seeing her. Check one more time.
Yeah, she's gone.
Yep. Okay. She must be on her way. No cell service. All right. So I'm hearing some similar themes in what we all heard and questions we have and possible actions. And as Krista and I worked out a guide for tonight's meeting, it's interesting that some of the possible future action falls in line with what was heard tonight. And we are a little bit ahead of schedule. So I didn't know, maybe we could hear a little bit from Patrick if he wants to provide any. We have a few extra minutes if you want to provide some of your comments now.
Sure. Yeah, I think, similarly to what a lot of folks have said, I think the report was very comprehensive. That was great. And actually in a meeting with Nate yesterday, just sort of a regular check-in that Krista, Don, and I have with Nate and members of his team, Nate said that might be the most comprehensive report he's ever done for a district. So I think what we saw reflects that, which is really great. And I think as others have said, it's great that it provides a lot of information, and in some ways it only launches us into now the work that needs to be done to figure out what to do with all of that great information. One of the things I appreciated about it was it sort of acknowledged that we do have a financial challenge that we need to work through. That for a while that was a question, right? Like we were presenting information, but that wasn't necessarily recognized or accepted broadly. We're at a point now where I think it is recognized and accepted broadly that we have something to work through. So I think it was helpful even just in that regard. And it puts us into a problem solving mode as opposed to a problem questioning mode, which is more productive. So that's good news. And I guess what I like most about it is it says there are options. I think Rob summarized it pretty well. We have to do something. There's the cost-effective mindset. There are ways to save money that keep all of our schools open, and there are ways to save money that don't keep all of our schools open. And getting to a point where it's clear, even from that big picture lens, what direction we're going in would be helpful. When I think about the keep schools open option, because frankly, that seems like the most likely direction for me, but I think if that's true, for this board to make that publicly known could be really beneficial. And it just sets us on a path. And I think probably more than anything, we need to start gaining some clarity on what our path forward is, and probably work from big grain sizes down to smaller grain sizes, but we still need clarity on the big grain sizes. And I think there's at least enough information here to get us even one step down that path from a big grain size kind of perspective. But what I like about it is the report suggests, yeah, you have a problem and you have to figure it out. It's not the most dire situation that he's seen with a lot of districts that he's done work with. And we're fortunate in that we have options. And frankly, he said, we're fortunate in Vermont because we're already such a high spending state, and MAUSD is no different. That's part of why we have many more options than some states. He works with some districts that are already spending $7,000 a student that are experiencing these challenges and don't have anything to turn to realize savings. We're spending almost $20,000 a student, and that gives us some latitude that we should be appreciative about and take advantage of. And he lays out some ways that we can do that. Some of the things that really caught my attention in thinking about that, as folks have mentioned here, there are sort of two concepts that are in Nate's report and that I've had some dialogue with Nate about. And those are the cost-effective mindset that we've talked about some here, and really unpacking what that means. To an extent, it's similar to what we've done a little bit of in terms of sister schools, and really thinking about shared personnel and who wears how many hats, and that sort of different way of operating, but it takes it to a whole new level. But related to that, a little bit different, but related, is this concept of bounded autonomy. And really thinking about, and what I've understood that to mean is finding ways where, as a district, and I think primarily as a leadership team in the district, we work together to define what are the common agreements? What do we agree are kind of the rules we're going to play by that are consistent across our schools? And it's related to need. For example, X number of students who need support in literacy gets you X FTEs in literacy support, so that we have some kind of rules or bounds that we all understand and we've collaboratively developed that guide staffing decisions, and that positions us to be able to phase over time, because as needs shift, we're then positioned to shift with that need using those bounds. So that's really intriguing to me. I think it makes great sense. Those are some of the things that Kevin sort of mentioned them as the green ideas, right? in any scenario going forward, it looks like approaching things with a cost-effective mindset is a have to if we're going to try and keep schools, all of our schools open. So to me, it makes sense that we get started on that right away, in particular while things are fresh and it's on people's minds and the report is fresh with Nate. And I would look to Nate to help us with that process. So that seems like something that there doesn't need to be any delay on, that we can get started with. And frankly, if nothing else changes, starting down that path of cost-effective mindset and bounded autonomy positions us to move forward into the future more sustainably, but also the sooner we can have that sense of direction, the sooner we can start taking advantage of attrition to get us there, which Nate has spoken to as the preferred method to getting where you're trying to go. I also think about, so that seems to me like if we're thinking about next steps, that would be the first next step as I think about Nate's report and where we are and where we might be able to go. To me, another next step really is, and others have mentioned this too, looking at sixth grade. Nate spoke about some of the community interests and how moving sixth grade into the middle school checks a lot of those boxes. To me, there's a timing component. I think that's another next step that we should be looking at soon. But there's a timing component as to when that happens. Is this as part of a merger or not? I think either way, merger or no merger, looking at sixth grade moving into middle school makes sense. It's just a matter of when and under what conditions does that happen. And in line with that, Nate spoke very strongly about the alignment of a merger and how it checks a lot of the boxes of what people are looking for, in particular from a secondary perspective. And I tend to agree with what Nate was suggesting and what folks are looking for is good for our secondary students. There's a cost effectiveness component to it, as Rob said, saving, plus or minus $3 million. But it's important to recognize that not only does it save those dollars, but it does so by maintaining or expanding programming. We have to not lose sight of the programming impact as well as the dollars and cents impact. And when we can save dollars and maintain or grow programming, those are things that we need to give serious consideration to for the benefit of our students and our ability to achieve the ends. Yeah, so that's sort of where my thinking is. And there has been a lot of talk about the idea of something short of a merger that has increased collaboration across the districts. And I think maybe there's some potential there, but being able to do that well and reap the kind of benefits that we would reap, it seems, in a merger, I think it falls quite a bit short of what a merger could do in terms of checking off some of those boxes. I think there are likely some challenges that get in the way of really going very deep, in particular looking at curricular programming that make that kind of relationship effective and efficient, et cetera. Like the kids shuttling back and forth multiple times a day. I don't know, they're just things that I recognize the interest in keeping governance closer and some of the other benefits there, but I think what we lose in trying to sustain some of those benefits probably becomes greater than the benefits. So yeah, I guess those are some thoughts that I have. There are a lot of other thoughts, but those are enough to get us talking more.
We never need a reason for more talking. We're good at more talking.
Yeah. Well, and I guess my point, part of what I think I started out with is the greater recognition that we have to do something. Like we've been processing now for 2+ years, really more than that for board members that have been around a while, where we were talking about these challenges a year before we started engaging the community about these challenges. And we've been engaging the community for 2+ years. So we're pretty solidly in the 3 years that we've been talking about what we're going to do and don't yet have really much direction about what action we're going to take. And that was sort of my point in saying it's time to start down a path, even if it's a little baby step that we feel comfortable with, so that we can begin being intentional with some of, for example, the attrition we might try to take advantage of. And as Kevin said, everything in Nate's report that talks about change is multiple years it will take to initiate, to really get that change in place. And we need to keep that in mind as we as we weigh all the variables that are on the horizon, that we have ideas about what maybe could possibly happen, but we don't know where they're going to land. In all of those circumstances, we still have to do something. There isn't a combination of variables that is such that we can make no change and everything will be fine. If all the variables go as most in favor for us as they can, we still have work to do. So the sooner we can get started, the better.
Great, thanks, Patrick. And I see Kristen Blanchette came back. Kristen, did you want an opportunity to answer to some of those questions that are on the Jamboard? Like we were talking about what was heard, questions raised, possible actions, next steps. Did you want to comment on any of that? I swear I did see her.
Yeah, she's on, but I don't.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm just, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, well, then I guess what we can do is head into our actions items, and I'm sure there'll be a bit of discussion when we roll through those. So the first motion, it directs Patrick to begin the process of applying a cost-effective lens to our district operations. If Patrick works with a consultant such as Nate and his team, this would be about a 6-month process. Undertaking this work soon means that this cost-effective lens could potentially be in place for the FY24 budget. This timing also allows for a pace that considers the need to train and work closely with building principals and district leaders on this new approach. So our action item is to direct the superintendent to develop a structured and facilitated internal planning process that will allow school and district leaders to use protocols and practices that will enable MAUSD to embrace a cost-effective mindset, bounded autonomy, and clear roles, responsibilities, and decision-making rights. The goal of this action is to develop a plan that is broadly supported by building principals and central office. Is there someone willing to make that motion?
I will, Andrew.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Is there a second? Liz, thank you. All right, discussion. Andrew, I'll let you go first since you made you were willing to make the motion.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make the motion so we could have the discussion and move it forward. I guess that's a really big action item. And so I'm not sure how, Patrick, is that an action item that is actionable for you without lots of feedback from us?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Basically, the way I interpret that action item is get an agreement with Nate and get started working with Nate and the leadership team for MAUSD to figure out what that means and what it would look like here.
Okay, great.
Great. Kevin has his hand up.
So I've got a couple things I'd like to consider changing in the motion. And I'm not sure, maybe I'll present them both and I don't know how we go forward with them, but the responsibilities and decision-making rights, I just have a problem with the word right, and I would prefer the word structure. And then the last sentence, I have a little bit of a problem of us directing the superintendent to work with his building principals. So I would strike that last sentence and assume that that happens because those are his reports and he's discussing this thing with them, as opposed to us telling him to do that.
So
So
are you wanting to amend the motion?
I will like to amend the motion, yes.
Okay, so Kevin's, is there a second to amend the motion? Liz, is that your second? Yep. Okay, so Liz seconds. All right, this is only discussion now. The discussion is turned to the amendment. Steve, do you have a comment on the amendment?
Well, no, but I think I'm in favor of it.
Okay. All right. Rob, do you have a comment on the amendment?
Yeah, I don't support it. You know, it says a plan that is broadly supported. By no means does it say Patrick has to talk with principals in there. I really hope that he does. I'd like to keep that in there because I think support also means engagement. So we need all hands on deck, and it's a big lift, and I don't think we should all put it onto Patrick to do this lift. I think he needs to be working hand in hand with building leaders, and they need to help this lift also. So I don't support that amendment.
Okay. Sandy, comments regarding the amendment?
Yes, I had comments on the original action, but I'll address the amendment first. I wouldn't support the amendment because I don't think we've had a full discussion on the existing action. So it's a little hard for me procedurally because I feel like we could have had discussion about these other points that would affect my decision on such an amendment. I really actually think the action as it's currently worded, I think is appropriate. I think it gives a good nod to the public comments that we've heard regarding making sure that building principals are involved. And again, I strongly am confident that Patrick would involve the building principals, but by putting it here, it's also, to be blunt, it's cover for our superintendent. It's that we also acknowledge this. We trust that he will do these things, and that's what he will come back with. Like, and I have no doubt that he would do that. But it's nice in this public forum as school board members to put that language in there, and I did appreciate that language in there.
All right, thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I mean, it also was a little weird trying to respond to the amendment without talking through the rest of it. My comment on the rest of it is a bit germane to that, and that you know, part of this process, I think, is going to require feedback from the staff, and the staff are going to be in this cost-effective mindset, as far as I can tell, are going to have to shoulder more responsibility than they currently do if we're going to move some of the responsibilities out of central office to the different buildings. And I think part of the conversation that we started with staff at the last session involved some of those discussions and understanding how they, you know, what were their feelings about the report and some of the responsibilities it looks like they might need to take on to make this work. So, you know, taking the principles out of it in terms of the amendment, I think makes sense only in that I'd hope that we were talking to everybody about it, not just the principals.
Sandy, I see your hand up, but I want to check with anybody else who hasn't had a chance. Are there any board members that we haven't heard from that want to comment on the amendment? Now I got to find you. Oh. Patrick?
Yeah, I think so. Recognizing, so I can't see a path forward where I'm not doing this work with building principals, at least as folks have said. And I support Kevin's amendment because procedurally, it's a slippery slope, in particular in policy governance, for the board to direct ends and means. And when the board directs, do this thing and do it in this way, it's one baby step, but a step down that directing means perspective. So from that lens under policy governance, I think it makes sense as Kevin amended it. But wanted to just acknowledge, yeah, this work can't be done without a team approach.
Okay, thank you. And Sandy.
Thank you, Don. I was just thinking procedurally, if it makes sense to allow any of the other board members who might have wanted to make a more general comment regarding the original action. And then we can move on the amendment and then on to next steps, because I also had a proposed amendment, but I was wanting to hear everybody first, because it might actually affect my amendment once I hear everyone's comments in whole, if there were others who were actually wanting to have a discussion on the original first.
I think procedurally we have to now, because we have a motion and a second, we have to decide about the amendment and then do the next step. So if you want to vote, we could take a vote and see where we end up and then go from there.
Can we hear the amendment first before we vote on it?
Sure. Let me get you all where I can see you all. Okay. So Kevin's amendment was to direct, this is how, with Kevin's amendment, this is how it would read now. Direct the superintendent to develop a structured and facilitated internal planning process that will allow school and district leaders to use protocols and practices that will enable MAUSD to embrace a cost-effective mindset, bounded autonomy, and clear roles, responsibilities, and decision-making structures. So, and he would have removed that last sentence. Hi, Sarah. All right, so Sandy, is your hand still up from before, or is that a new hand? Okay. So I think the best way to proceed is to vote on that amendment, and then we'll go from there depending on how the vote goes. So all those in favor of the amendment, please give a thumbs up so I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 that are in favor of the amendment. And how many are opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4 opposed. Okay, so the motion carries to amend the original motion. So now the motion reads with the amended language. The last sentence is gone and rights is turned to structure. Now we can go back to discussing the motion. Sandy.
Thanks, Don. I was trying to hit the raise hand reaction thing fast enough. Thanks for looking. So I would move to amend the action to replace, well, to add now at the end of the current amended action. The goal of this action is to develop a plan that the goal of this action, develop a plan to keep open the 5 elementary schools in our district.
Okay, so that's Sandy's making an amendment to the amended motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Steve? All right, now discussing the amendment, not the original motion, just the amendment.
May I
Right?
start?
Oh.
Just so I can talk about
Sure.
why I did it.
Sure.
I appreciate it. So I heard what we had talked about earlier when we were talking about the report and taking an action, a bold action in a direction. And I feel like given that the cost effectiveness and the bounded autonomy in Nate's report was tied to the strong community input that he received to keep the 5 schools open, I wanted to add that goal to it and to see how that comes out from the administration, taking all those pieces together.
Okay. Right, Steve?
Yeah, I heard the same thing, and I was wondering how we were going to manage to put that into tonight's discussion and do something with it. I would like to take that amendment and put it at the beginning of this action, not at the end, and say, with the goal of working towards keeping all 5 schools open, we'll take these steps, so that you're putting the goal in front of the action.
Okay, but
That's not critical, but it just seems like it flows better.
I would accept that friendly amendment if that's possible, but I'll let other people talk first.
Just
Right.
one tiny little consideration is remembering that we have 6 schools. And there have been proposals to close the middle high school as well.
Okay.
So we
I
might
like
need,
6.
might need to talk about elementary schools. To be clear, since we haven't really decided what we're doing yet on the other end of the scope.
okay, Liz is patiently waiting.
Do you believe that's why we're doing it? Absolutely, is to keep all 5 schools open. My issue with that amendment is that, one, a lot of the feedback that I heard was to guarantee the right to vote because people wanted the right to make the decision, not that their decision would be to keep their school open, A. And B, our purpose of our school board, the ends policy is to provide access to education for all kids in our community, not to keep a building open. And I feel uncomfortable with that. I think that's why we're doing it. I think, and it's obvious that's why we're doing it, but even if we weren't doing that and we were doing a merger, or we were doing some other situation, any other option, we'd have to do the same cost-effective mindset. That's a part of any decision we're going to make. So I don't. I think that's. But I think the right for all towns to vote is one thing, for people to make their own decision, and we've agreed on that. But I don't know that we've agreed that I've heard wide agreement that all of the schools need to remain open. I don't think that's decided. So I think that's why we'd be looking at this specific model. I think that's why we're going to do it, is because we want to keep them all open and we want to see what that's going to look like. And that's what we're going for. But I think that's straying a little bit from my goal, which is access to education for all of our students.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Dave?
Thank you. My first question is procedurally. So if I can say, Sandy, is you're accepting Steve Rooney's recommendation to modify your amendment and Patrick's comment that you refer to elementary schools, and if so, is the seconder okay with that? I think that's the first procedural thing.
So Sandy said she could agree to that, and Steve was actually made the second on it. So I would assume he's okay with it because he was the seconder.
I'm good with, just to clarify, I'm good with the moving of the goals to the top. To be honest, I'm a little less, I was more inclined to make it the 6 schools and not just the 5 elementary schools. I'm happy to take Patrick's friendly amendment to add, 6 schools to it for now. So I don't know what Steve's thoughts on that as a second or friendly amendment, or if he really would prefer to keep it on elementary, the 5 elementary schools.
I think all of this is good discussion. I mean, we know that, and to Liz's point, we need to agree whether or not we want to set that as a goal. I mean, I think part of proposing this is to put it out there for folks to talk about. So I know that there are many reasons to keep the 5 elementary schools open aside from just preserving a building. But I don't know if we've completely fleshed out exactly how that's going to impact. How does that goal impact our ability to keep the high school open, and is that goal currently in conflict with what we might do in a merger or not? I mean, that's why I thought the elementary school thing at least was a little more clear in my mind at this stage of the discussion.
So I accept the friendly amendment as sort of stated by Dave, so we can keep having that discussion.
So the current friendly amendment is 6. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's
Oh.
the one that David presented by the goal of this action to develop a plan. Actually, I thought Steve's language was better. I don't know if someone wrote it, but the idea of looking at this plan and can we keep the 5 elementary schools open? And of
Okay.
course, what comes with that is what's the effect of that if you do, I would imagine. But that's not something that needs to be in the action.
Right. So when you made the original motion, you said 5 elementary schools open, to keep open 5 elementary schools.
Okay, then it would
So-
just stand. Yeah. Is that right, Steve?
Steve's amendment was to move it to the beginning of the sentence just for continuity, I think.
Yep, that's fine.
Good, thank you. We're all on the same page, I think. And I appreciate the amendment. I'll support it. Thank you.
Okay, Andrew.
I guess I'm a little confused because I thought we had previously as a board voted by majority to agree that we weren't going to close any of the elementary schools unless we had a vote by that town that the school was in. So I'm wondering if this is redundant or if this the intention of this amendment is something different than that.
Steve, I'm guessing you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've obviously said we wouldn't close a school on our own without the towns voting on it. But the goal of keeping them open is a board goal, not necessarily a goal to change how we're going to deal with the town's vote in the case that we do close a school. It's really just to provide some background as to why we're moving forward with this cost-effective approach. Why are we doing that? I think, and that's what Nate was pointing to when he was, in his comments, was set the goals and then plan for that goal. So trying to state a goal, and the goal here is really to deal with our financial issues with the goal of keeping the 5 elementary schools open. That doesn't necessarily change how our promises to the towns for voting purposes. If we decided, even through all of this exercise, that it still wasn't possible to keep them all open without proposing a close, the towns would still vote on that.
Okay, Dave.
So I think Steve said it clearly. That's good.
Okay, Sarah.
Sorry, apologize for my late arrival. I really struggle with how we could be in a position of when we had this plan. It's because we asked for a plan. It's so we could see where things might go, and I've seen what that looks like, and that to me is, I'm assuming, with a cost-effective mindset, because I feel like that's what we do. And so what we're saying is we're willing to go down to 3 classrooms at a school because it's cost effective, but the school is open. I'm not going to support that. I feel like that's not equity, and that's not good education, and that's not good practice for a goal that seems really sort of pointless at that point. Like, what are we doing this for?
Okay, thank you. Patrick.
Yeah, I guess as I'm thinking about it, because I'm certainly hearing what folks are talking about, like and maybe it's nuanced, but it seems like a really important nuance if it is. The sole objective, I don't think, is keep schools open at all cost. I think really what we're talking about is look for new ways to operate that are effective in terms of meeting student needs and enable us to save enough money to keep schools open. And it seems really important because I think if doing this meant we were going to dramatically decrease our ability to meet student needs, but we kept schools open, I don't think that's the goal, right? The goal is meet student needs, and let's at least give it a shot to see if we can use this cost-effective mindset as a way to do that and keep our schools all open. And that's how I'm interpreting what this reads as. It's not above all else, keep schools open. It's above all else, meet student needs, and let's give this a shot to see if this is a way to do it with all of the schools we currently have.
Okay, Sandy.
Thank you, Patrick. I agree. I think that is an important nuance. I think what overarches everything are what our ends are. We always have to be keeping a lens on the ends, policies that we have. And so to me, that is overarching together with what we're doing here today and trying to see, I think you said it very well. Like, let's see what we can do. Let's really keep a mind towards, can we do this with keeping the schools open with cost effective, mindset, bound autonomy, all of those things, but always keeping our ends in mind that we have to be moving towards those ends and see if that can happen.
Okay, any other comments on the amendment? Okay, so the amendment is to change the language to read, the goal of this action is to plan to keep 5 elementary schools in the district, and then direct the superintendent to develop a structured and facilitated plan to the end of the sentence that now reads decision-making structure. If you are in favor of that motion, please put your hands up and hold them up, or your thumbs up and hold them up.
Don, okay, all right. I just didn't think that was the language I used. That's why I'm shaking my head.
Chris, did you happen to capture it? Did I miss something?
There's been a lot. So I had the goal of this action is to develop a plan to keep open the 5 elementary schools in our district. And then carries on with direct the superintendent to develop a structured and so on.
Okay.
Is that what you remember, Sandy?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I was sort of thinking that it would start with
the goal
with the goal of
okay, with the goal of this action to develop a plan to keep open 5 elementary schools in our district, direct the superintendent to develop a structured and facilitated internal planning process that will allow school and district leaders to use protocols and practices that will enable MAUSD to embrace a cost-effective mindset. Modern autonomy, clear rules.
I know Steve's going to want a comma before direct.
Well, I think the with is subtle. The with is sort of speaks to what Patrick was saying. I mean, saying the goal is this is very direct in saying this is our only goal. Saying with the goal in mind is sort of like we're striving towards something, but it's not necessarily going to be the end of the discussion.
Right. I would agree. And that I did like Steve's change when he put it to the beginning. And so when I said I accepted the friendly amendment, that's also why I like with the goal of this action to develop a plan. Something like that. Do you see?
Yep. Patrick?
At the risk of further complicating amendments and amendments on amendments and such, given our prior conversation, I'm wondering if really the statement is with the goal of achieving the ends while keeping all 5 elementary schools open is really what we were saying. Because the goal is and always will be and should always be achieving the ends. And I think that's where there was some discrepancy in the way people interpreted that.
I'm friendly with that.
I'm friendly with that as well if others are okay with that friendly amendment. I realize we're kind of going out of procedure, but it is lengthy, and I see Rob's hands up.
Yeah, I guess my clarifying question to that is, we've had 2 years in a row with non-compliant in regards to our A1 ends report. So I think that's a complicating factor that the board would have to consider, is if we keep continuing having non-compliance with our A1 ends. I don't necessarily, I agree that's the goal, but I don't agree with that language being added because then we're maybe balking on the fact that we are thinking about trying to keep all 5 elementary schools open. And that's just where I'm landing right now.
Okay. Well, we didn't really vote on the last amendment, and now we've got another one. Yeah, I'm getting a headache.
Me personally, I know I made the amendment and I realize Rob's concerns, but I do feel that adding the piece about the ends together with that, we really also want the goal of keeping the schools open. Let's look at these other recommendations from Nate. So the language that Patrick suggested, if Chris is able to restate it, I
think we've got to vote it down before.
Right, you're gonna have to vote your motion down and then take up the next amendment. So,
well, I'm okay going as is without the ends piece and then see how that goes, and then we'll take the next step. I agree. Done. I agree. Let's do it.
Okay, so keeping it at the beginning with the goal of this action to keep open 5 elementary schools in our district, comma, direct the superintendent. Dave.
So, thank you. Understanding that eventually market forces and demographics and whatnot might possibly get us to the point of asking a school to close and asking a community to vote. We have hundreds of very nervous and fearful citizens out there. It is time to put to bed that this activity might close an elementary school. We have a consultant that says we can deliver quality education and keep 5 elementary schools open. It's time we put to bed the notion that we're going to close a school. Let's give our citizens a level of confidence that we're going to operate 5 elementary schools, and our directive to the superintendent and leadership is to develop a cost-effective plan that's going to deliver quality education and keep 5 schools open. Thank you.
All right. So let's vote on Sandy's amendment, which was, and Sandy and Steve's, move it to the first paragraph, and the line is, with the goal of this action is to develop a plan to keep open 5 elementary schools in our district. If you are in favor, please give a thumbs up and hang on so I can count you. So I'm seeing 1, 2, 3 in favor. And if you, Dave, is your hand up or is that from before? Okay. So you 1, 2, 3, sorry, 4. That's 4 in favor.
There's
You are-
5. There's 5.
Where's 5?
So,
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 5. Sorry. You jump around. All right. Those opposed? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Kristen, what does that mean? You opposed?
well, so since I came in late, I was trying to ask more questions before we got to this point. So I feel like I can't vote because I really don't understand this. I mean, it sort of comes down to people in the community, we say stuff and we come out with stuff, but what does it mean, right? So we have to boil it down. And I really don't even know what we're voting on right now. So I can't participate because I couldn't have asked my questions like a few minutes ago and I tried. So I just feel like I can't, so I guess I have to abstain. I guess that's what that's called.
Okay.
I don't want to vote for something I don't completely understand or vote against something I don't completely understand. So thank you.
Okay, so was I correct? I counted 4 no votes. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 4 no, 5 are in favor, 4 are no, and we have 1 abstention. So the motion passes with 5 in favor.
But I was trying to ask questions before and I wasn't acknowledged. So I
I'm
apologize.
sorry, I didn't see you.
That's okay. Sorry about that. But anyway, so I will be louder in the future. Thank you.
Okay, so now the motion is, with the goal of this action, is to develop a plan to keep open 5 elementary schools in our district, to direct the superintendent to develop a structured and facilitated internal planning process that will allow school and district leaders to use protocols and practices that will enable MAUSD to embrace a cost-effective mindset, bounded autonomy, and clear roles, responsibilities, and decision-making structure. Back, that's our motion now. Discussion?
Yeah, the English at the beginning is a little bollocksed, I'd say.
So can I just ask what that means? Like, what does that mean? Can anyone explain to me very succinctly without any of those big words, without any legal stuff? What does that mean? And how, if that passes, will we explain that to people of what that means? Like, seriously, I came in late. I apologize. That's why I'm not running for the board again, because my job is too busy and I can't get to meetings on time. But so can someone please tell me what that actually means? Sarah, do you? I think Sarah might know what it means. I don't mean to put you on the spot, dear, but what does it mean?
Sarah?
Kristen, like you, I came in late, so I missed part of the discussion. So I'm going to defer to somebody else.
Okay, sorry. If you've been there,
okay, I questioned the same part about it. Like, I understand looking for new ways to operate that meet student needs. And I guess, and there's a thing to keep schools open. I'm not in favor of that being part of it, but that's part of the statement. So that's, I don't totally understand it myself.
I'm wondering from the board level, if it, what needs to make sense is if we have a same understanding as our superintendent. So I guess I'd want to know from Patrick how he would frame that and see if it lines up with what we're thinking.
Yeah, I think I want to acknowledge first the importance of the message that is conveyed to the broader community with this action item, right? This is pretty significant, I think, in terms of messaging, and that's, yeah, just stating the obvious, I think there. For me, I think that the challenge I see with the way it's written currently is it could be interpreted that above all else, make a plan that keeps all schools open, which is why I was trying to incorporate or suggest to incorporate some language that spoke to the importance of meeting student need while giving this, while finding a way to do that while keeping all of our schools open. Because the reality is, like, we could shave $25 million out of our budget and keep the doors open in all of our schools. The question is, what will we be doing for students under that circumstance? So if the goal is keep the doors open, I have no question we can do that. It's a different goal to say keep all the doors open and provide really high quality education, which I think is really what we're saying. Only that's not necessarily how the action currently reads.
Sandy. You're still muted.
Thank you, Patrick. I wanted to first respond to Kristen's question when I raised my hand, which was, I had made the amendment to the amended action, which had taken off the last sentence. So our current action before I made my amendment took off the last sentence of the goal of this action. Okay. And I added the goal about developing a plan with an eye, with in essence, an eye to keeping the schools, the elementary schools open, because I felt that was more aligned with what was in Nate Levinson's report. And his what I'd said is that he heard from the community input community. He listed all these priorities. He indicated it was very important to the community that we look at a plan that keeps the elementary schools open. And he felt that if we put into effect a cost-effective mindset, adding bounded autonomy and the other clear roles and responsibilities, that's what was in his plan, that we should be able to do that. And so I was adding that last piece because it was part of why in Nate's report, I don't know if why, but it was included together in Nate's report. So I wanted that to be clear in our action today. I totally concede that I think ends are always in anything we do. And they have to be, because that is policy. It's what Patrick has to do. And I just assume that even with direction, he will always keep those ends in mind. So, and I have full faith that he will, that he'll talk to his principals, he'll talk with Nate and try to really understand what he thinks that we can do to put this into effect. But I wanted to make that statement also responding to earlier commentary, Kristen, earlier in the meeting, about the need to really be clear about our view about the schools, the elementary schools.
Steve.
So I think what we were going to do to try to incorporate Patrick's thoughts was to vote on Sandy's amendment and then work on perhaps another amendment. So I know it's crazy, but that's the way this works. And so right now, the amendment, I don't know, Chris, can you read back just like the first 6 words?
Sorry, couldn't find myself there on all the screens. So I have, with the goal of keeping all 5 elementary schools open, direct the superintendent to develop a structured and facilitated internal planning process, blah, blah, blah.
All right. Now, Patrick, what was your insert language at the beginning of that? You're muted.
It was something to the effect of, with the goal of achieving the ends while keeping all 5 elementary schools open.
That's probably as succinct as it's going to get. And that's my amendment.
Okay. So is there a second?
I'll second.
Andrew. All right, now we can only talk about the amendment. So hold your thoughts about anything else. This is only about the amendment. Steve. Oh, where's everybody?
I'm all set.
Okay. Patrick.
So for me now, the way that amendment reads, when I really sort of boil it down to its essence, it's really saying we still have to pursue doing great things for our students. And if there's any way that we can do great things for our students and keep our schools open, we owe it to our community to try and make that work. And I think that's essentially what we're saying here is like Nate feels really confident that this bounded autonomy and cost-effective mindset, perhaps accompanied with some other actions as well, but at least this as a core action gives us a fighting chance to continue to do great things for students and keep schools open. And I think we're saying, let's give that a shot and try to make that work. But it instills that fact that it has to work for our students and it has to be effective in meeting our student needs. And we won't really know how well it does that until we are in it and we're trying it and we're trying to make it work. And this is saying we're gonna try and make that work.
Thank you. Rob.
Yeah, I just always assumed our board work and the work that Patrick does is always just for the high quality education to meet our A1 ends. I don't think we need to explicitly state that. And also when you throw that in there, I think it leaves out our middle and high schools sort of out to dry a little bit. You know, is that an assumption that they're gonna stay open if our middle school students end up going to Virgins? Is that an open Mount Abe middle school anymore? So I think that I don't know. I will either add a sixth school or just. I hope people assume that's why we're here. That's why we're at this meeting, is that we're trying to achieve our A1 ends for all of our students. That's what we're attempting to do. If we have to explicitly state that, then I think we've got a lot more work maybe than we think we do.
Andrew?
Yeah, to Rob's point, I mean, I think it is implied that we should be meeting ends, but I thought it was also implied that we weren't going to close schools without asking for a vote from the community. And so if that's implied, but we want to make it explicit, then I think we also need to make it explicit that to the community that we are interested in keeping your schools open, but not at the cost of ends.
Okay. Any more discussion on the amendment? Okay, as I have written it down, the amendment is with the goal of keeping, with the goal of achieving the ends while keeping all 5 elementary schools open in our district. We direct the superintendent to develop blah, 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 ends on structure. Is that what you have, Chris?
It is now.
It was that, did I capture it as was
You did.
Steve
Yeah.
and Andrew? Okay, all right. So how do you vote on this amendment? If you are in favor, please give a thumbs up of the newly revised amendment. All right, and let me count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, 9 in favor. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, 1 abstention. All right, so this amendment has been has passed. So now the motion reads with the goal of achieving the ends while keeping all 5 elementary schools open in our district. We direct the superintendent to develop a structure, all the way down to decision-making structure. Do you want to discuss that now? Sarah?
If we've already discussed these phrases, please let me know, but is there a way we could have a couple definitions about what bounded autonomy, clear roles and responsibilities and decision-making rights actually means? And I don't know if that is to Patrick or whoever initially wrote this motion, but I'm just curious where all that came from and what it means.
So a lot of that came from Nate's, recommend some guidance that Nate recommended. So, and he talked about the internal planning process in his report. And, but I think we can also just hear what Patrick thinks that means and then see if that's what we think, if that's reasonable.
Yeah, so, and as Don said, Nate, offered much, if not most of that language for the motion. And Don and Kristen and I have had opportunities to talk with Nate more about what that means in our regular meetings with Nate and his team. And what I've taken from those conversations is the understanding that it's working as a team, some combination of teams internally as MAUSD to sort of write the rules that guide how we staff our buildings in this cost-effective mindset manner. And that we write those rules collectively. And through that process, we know what are the rules that apply across the district. And this is what everyone's going to follow. What are we sort of tight on? And where are we intentionally not tight? And there's autonomy at the school level to make decisions. So for me, that summarizes, I think, the bounded autonomy and the roles and responsibilities and structures, however that phrase is. I don't have that right in front of me, but that's how I interpret that. Obviously, loads and loads of details to work out over several months with teams of people doing it. So not clear exactly where that will land, but that we have something that we've developed collectively that there's broad agreement on, and we all kind of know the rules we're playing by, and we move forward in that way.
Kristen.
My question is, would any of that bump up against the bargaining agreements and things like that? And I know that in current negotiations, there's been some gray areas that are a little interesting. And so it seems like we have collective bargaining agreements, and then you're coming up with another structure of maybe how people will be whatever, and I don't know. So I just think thinking of it in that context, that makes me a little nervous. And not just making sure if and when we do that, we don't muck up things and create things that can be grieved, etc.
Okay, thank you. Rob?
Yeah, I echo what Kristen just said. And then my other question, and I abstained from the last vote, not because I didn't support the motion. I just didn't know who made that amendment and who seconded it. I was a little confused there. It sounded like that Patrick made the language, but I didn't know procedurally who actually made the amendment motion and who seconded it. So
Steve made it and Andrew seconded it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. Any further discussion on this amended to death action item? Liz.
I'm excited to support it, and then I'm excited to see where it will lead. And given my understanding right now of with the efficiency in the sister schools that we do have, and the realities of certain positions, such as a nurse, for instance, that some can and cannot have realistically, this begs to me for us to have a really good conversation and push school choice up on the agenda, because Virgins has it. And, this could, once we find out where, how the schools are going to look the same and how they're going to look different, there may not every school will be able to provide, my feeling is that every school isn't going to be able to provide everything to every student. And some students may need to go to one over the other for reasons that the family or the school may recognize. And so this makes me want to, as this unfolds and we get more information about it, what it will look like. I really hope that we consider giving families some choices between the schools.
Great. Thank you, Liz. All right, I thought I saw one more hand, but I don't see it now. Let me check. All right. I think it's time to vote on this action item. This action item now reads, with the goal of achieving the ends while keeping all 5 elementary schools open in our district, we direct the superintendent to develop a structured and facilitated internal planning process that will allow school and district leaders to use protocols and practices that will enable MAUSD to embrace a cost-effective mindset, bounded autonomy, and clear roles, responsibilities, and decision-making structures. All those in favor, please put your thumbs up and let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. So that motion carries. Okay. Next action item, to charge the superintendent with revising the budget. Actually, let me read your little guidance. So the second motion ensures that as the budget for FY24 is developed, it would be presented using the model developed by the Levinson team. So the action item is to charge the superintendent with revising the budget line items and presentation model, including budget line items to more clearly and transparently reflect the use and location of expenditures based on the recast budget file created by New Solution K-12, with the goal being that the 2024 budget may be presented in this new format with updated line items.
So moved.
All right, Steve.
I'll second, Andrew.
Andrew. Any discussion?
Patrick, you want to walk us through that one a little bit?
I'm happy to, and I'll look to Floyd to help with this. Floyd and his team worked most closely with Nate and his team to kind of gather figures and work with Nate to build that new structure. So I frankly haven't spent loads of time with it. I think conceptually the way Nate has kind of grouped expenditures makes a lot of sense. And I think it does reflect spending, sort of what is district spending versus what is spent in schools more accurately. And I do think as Nate has spoken to it in the past, what we were working under was sort of the best our minds could get wrapped around as folks who were immersed in the prior multiple districts and just sort of brought that in together in a merged budget. This really looks at that very differently, which I think is beneficial in many ways. So conceptually, I'm in support of it. I think it makes a lot of sense. And this charge would give us the opportunity to dig in even more and work to create internal models building off of what Nate has shared with us to mirror this going forward. So I think it's a good idea. Floyd and I have talked some about it. I think we're both in support, but I can let Floyd elaborate with his thoughts as well.
Sure, I'll go for just a second or two. What I see is most advantageous from a management standpoint for the board, for us internally, and for the community is what we classified for the ease of classification, $11 million of central office expense. Nate tore it apart and using his experience allocated $9.5 million of that 11 to the schools directly. He was able to directly create that tie, leaving only 1.8 million of allocated central office to be spread around. For example, we have, and to a large degree, it was just ease because we don't know where these costs may end up at the end of the year. Let's use an HRA for an example. We know we have $750,000 of exposure there, and we carried that as a central office expense in our budget. And then as our teammates use those dollars, well, then we would spread them back out to the schools. That's a very simple snapshot of what Nate has taken and just said, let's just put that exposure, that budgeted dollars right to the school. It allows us to really look at central office costs as what is a central office cost and what is a school-based cost as a school-based cost. I think it's going to do great things for our community to be able to recognize that, and much easier for the board to work on how to read the budgets and how to have a better sense of where we're spending the money.
Thanks, Floyd. Sarah.
I'm just clarifying. So when it says it like puts it back at the schools, does then it itemize it by every school, or is that by just in general the schools? And then my second part of that question is, when it comes to, since most of our cost is people, and some people cost more than others because they do, where is that, like an average across the board, like the average person's out, like when they're allocated to a school, or is that if that school has the 5 oldest teachers in the district, does that mean that they show up as like being more expensive? I'm just curious what this whole thing does.
So first, we like to say most seasoned. I see it as two separate things, and then Floyd can certainly add some more detail. So we are required to report expenses by school still in terms of how the structure sort of feeds up to the state. So we have to record keep that way. So that's sort of one piece of it in terms of allocating funds to a school. But then there's decision making related to costs per school. Now, when we're talking about staffing levels, like if we're thinking about the bounded autonomy process that we're going to go through, when we're talking about what staffing levels at a school need to look like based on those bounds that we create together collaboratively, it wouldn't be based on dollars spent on staffing as much as it would be based on FTEs of staffing. And we probably would, in those circumstances, if we're talking about any cost, it would be an average cost. So that way a school who has a veteran staff isn't penalized for a veteran staff and therefore get fewer people than other schools might.
I think that was one of the definitions that Nate put on the weighted, the WSF funding formula, was that you use an average salary, not a specific salary.
Right.
Kevin?
I am struggling a little bit to charge the superintendent. I'd like to make an amendment to the motion that would read to recommend the superintendent revise the budget line items, and the rest of it would remain unchanged.
Okay. Is there a second to that amendment? Liz is seconding it. Okay, discussion around the amendment, the change of the word charge to recommend. Rob?
Yeah, Kevin, appreciate the amendment because it's a great segue to something I've been chewing on in my head is, you know, I assume you brought that forth based on the idea of policy governance and the board directing the superintendent. It's why we took principle out of the last motion, I believe. You know, I'd hate to see us stumble on the nuances of policy governance when we really have some big issues to tackle. And if we're going to bog ourselves down with, is this, telling the superintendent to do this or telling them to do that, I think, we need to step up as a board, and maybe policy governance is something we suspend when we know what needs to be done and when what should be done. Let's just say what needs to happen. And I would hate to see us go down this rabbit hole of like, well, we can't say anything because we're bounded by these policies. And, so I don't support the amendment. I just think otherwise we're going to be chasing our own tail. And it just is a really frustrating process. And again, I assume A1Ns are always trying to be met. So I don't support it.
Steve?
I think the last time we had Floyd and Patrick change the format of the budget as it appeared in the annual report, we charged them with that as well. I think that was something we asked them specifically to do. I think we're being consistent in that request. It's a report by the board to the community. And it's really, to meet our goal of linkage with our ownership. So I'm not sure that it's outside of our authority or responsibilities to charge Patrick with that request.
Okay, Kevin?
To me, this is more than a top level budget. We're talking about going into line items and stuff. And I think we're going a little bit too far into the weeds. I also think that there's enough out there, given it is a recommendation out of the report. We have a good working relationship with Patrick. I don't think we have to charge him. I think he already understands. And I think maybe recommend is not the proper word, but maybe it's the desire of the board for or something to that nature. But I'm not sure that we have to charge him with changing light items in the budget.
Okay. And Sandy?
To both Rob and then Steve and Kevin, I don't see an issue with keeping the language as is to charge from a policy governance perspective, because policy governance always allows the board to do certain things, but we have to take action to do it so that we're clear and we give the superintendent notice of certain things that we expect to happen. So policy governance completely allows, when appropriate, and if we vote for it to be appropriate, to take certain action. Also, I think getting our input from our superintendent and from Floyd, our CFO, that, this is something that makes sense and that they are ready to do. I think we're just also, so that to me is important in going ahead with just the current language, and not just to recommend, but just to go ahead and do it as a board.
All right, any further discussion on the amendment to change the word charge to recommend? All right, all those in favor of the amendment to change the word charge to recommend, please give a thumbs up, or if you are in favor of that. 1, 2, so 2 in favor. Opposed? 1, 2. Rob, are you in favor or opposed? You have a thumbs up. Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, you move 1, 2, 3, 6, 7. 7 are opposed. Any abstentions? All right, so that amendment does not pass. It's back to the original language. Rob?
Yeah, and I mean, for me, in all honesty, this is sort of way above any pay grade I'd even come close to. But I think this is a great opportunity to think about moving forward. And something Dave said multiple times is what a great opportunity if the board decided for a committee structure of a finance committee, that they could sort of sit down and even compare what was done to what's moving forward if this is the path if Floyd and Patrick and the team are going to take. I wish I had the time to understand it, or the brains. I actually don't understand it, and I don't. So I'll definitely punt it upwards, but it'd be great if there's some board members who could get involved and just sort of see those nuances. As I think Nate said, there was 1,800 line items or whatever, and so have a better sense of that.
Thank you. Kristen.
Yeah, I think that as we come out of COVID and the administration has more time, we can do some of these things that, I mean, in any situation, there's like 10 things you could be doing that you just don't have time for. I had a conversation with somebody last week saying, that's a great idea, but we've been a little busy. So I hope that, I don't know when it's going to get a little more easy on you guys, but that, yeah, some of these things can be looked at. And as you said, Rob, we need board members participating too. And the board members right now are very busy with different committees too. So I think that there's finite capacity, and that once there's a little give, that some of these other things can happen.
Dave.
Thanks, Rob, for your endorsement of a finance committee. I think we still believe it would be appropriate. In fact, to me, it's ridiculous that we don't have one. And it relates really directly to questions about what would be the impact of Lincoln leaving the district. I think that there was an intersection there between policy and finance, and Floyd was asked to develop an estimate based on information from the Lincoln people, but that information was flawed and should have gone through some sort of committee process before it went out to the public.
Any other comments on the action item? All right. So the motion is to charge the superintendent with revising the budget line items and presentation model, including budget line items, to more closely and transparently reflect the use and location of expenditures based on the recast budget file created by New Solution K-12, with the goal being that the 2023 and 2024 budget may be presented in this new format with updated line items. If you are in favor, please put your thumb up and hold it up so I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 in favor. If you are opposed, you can give a thumbs down. Oh, 9. People jump around and then I lose who I counted. Opposed? Abstentions. All right, so the motion carries. Okay. All right. So that's it for action items, but just to in a way, as a way of preparing to bring us closer to some next steps, Krista and I worked on some guidance to consider 2 additional next steps at a future meeting. Some of them we happen to talk about tonight. I have no doubt that we're going to need more discussion beyond what we did tonight. So the first that we were going to recommend, but that the board strongly consider a commitment to moving the 6th grade to the middle school. In Nate's report, this option is a green light in that it meets many community and board criteria. The report notes that it would be easier to provide a broad array of academic and enrichment options for these students and that it would also be easier to maintain target class sizes for grade 6 in one school rather than 5 schools. The consolidation of 6th graders would also provide a larger peer group, which is in line with the criteria. From a financial standpoint, the greatest savings from this move would be if this happened in tandem with a cost-effective mindset at the K-12 level. Having that in place would also ensure that even though the number of students in each elementary school would be smaller, there would not be the financial pressures to close the school. The second we recommend is that the board consider providing feedback or recommendation to the merger study committee regarding the potential for community buy-in if the articles of agreement on any potential merger situation ensured a town's right to vote on potential closure of its school. It's clear from the Levinson report that a merger with Addison Northwest School District meets many of the criteria with many potential benefits. However, we agree that Nate's assessment that a merger recommendation is doomed to fail without this assurance in place. So these are we're just planting a seed to prepare you for a future discussion, and as some guidance, start thinking about the big picture, the long-term impacts, wisdom, applying some of the lessons we've learned from the past, and let's use those thoughts to have a conversation that brings us to a place of group wisdom. And I believe that we can make better decisions as a group. So just planting a seed, you'll see it coming on a future agenda. Krista and I will really work on getting the words concise and clear so that they explain enough that you understand them and that they'll still guide our work. Andrew.
So did I hear you correctly, Don, that a potential action item would be the discussing or moving on an action to move 6th grade?
Yeah, if at an upcoming meeting. We realize that this is going to be a long ongoing discussion. We're just picking some parts that look like they might be able to begin action, because it would take a while to get them, to the place.
Okay, so I guess one of the reflections I have in that is I can hear that now that we have sort of some green lights from the Levinson report that here are specific things that can happen. I also hear that how that's really sort of in the weeds in a way, like moving a grade into middle school. So I think it does. I think maybe what we heard tonight from Kevin about changing words and action items may have been because this can start to get into the weeds about we're asking Patrick to do this and we want you to do this. And those are things that we traditionally or historically wouldn't have done under policy governance. So I don't know that we need to discuss that tonight. I'm just sort of reflecting. I can see how that can go down that lane.
We will keep that. I will share that with Krista to keep that in mind as we're sort of planning for future meetings.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Thank you. Kevin?
As you develop future considerations, actions, whatever you want to call them, and obviously this is all being driven by the Levinson report. It would be great to tie it to the G number within his report specifically. I know there's a certain G number for the 6th grade thing, and there was a G number for, some of the things we talked about tonight. And hopefully that would tie a certain amount of the confusion that we've had back to the report and the detail there.
Good point. Thank you. Okay, Steve.
Yeah, and I think part of this discussion should also be, one of the comments that I made it's in the spreadsheet that I made about Nate's report is that the financials that he gives in the appendix, it's a little bit difficult to tell what scale we're really going to end up at with this potential problem. And obviously there's lots of things that could change just how bad that problem is. But he sort of does his analysis at 2 different scales. And depending on which scale you look at, you've either got an $11 million problem in FY30, or you've got a $7 million problem in FY30. And if we convince the voters to spend 5% more every year, that number could either drop to 4 million or it could drop to close to 2 million. So understanding that Floyd and Patrick kind of have to give us a little bit of a feel for not relying so much on maybe Nate's numbers, but their take on the numbers for the next couple of years as to how dire a decision it is to move, a requirement is to move 6th grade at this moment would be helpful in that discussion.
Okay, great, thank you. Dave.
So I just wanted to react to Andrew's and Kevin's comments earlier this evening. Policy governance is a pretty broad umbrella. As I went through the training and as I observed or learned during my relatively short tenure on the board, policy governance is used in different ways across just the state of Vermont. And certainly big policy issues like moving 6th grade to a high school to intimate that this is a superintendent only action is absurd to me. When I first joined the board, it was almost like hands off, head in the sand, unless we have a crisis, which we eventually had. And the only thing we can do is decide whether to fire the superintendent once a year. The board has much broader responsibility for running the district than that. And we've come a long way, I think, in the 2 years that I've been on the board. I think we have further to go. I don't want to get into the weeds either. I think micromanaging the district is inappropriate for the board, but that's not to say that there aren't really important policy discussions and decisions that the board needs to make on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. All right. I'm sure Crystal will watch this and get it, but I've also jotted it down. All right. So our next item is an executive session around Title I, VSA 5313A3, evaluation of an employee. It should not, I hope it's not going to be a long one. I hope it would be short and sweet. And so we'll need a motion to go in at 7:15. And Patrick is willing to join us if board members want him in the meeting. You can invite him in as well.
Can we start without and then invite him?
Sure.
Okay,
So,
is that okay, Patrick? You'll wait around, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would move to go into executive session and just wait on the invitation.
okay.
Second, Steve.
All right. So Sandy, Steve, and the time is 8 o'clock. All right. All those in favor of going into executive session under Title I VSA 5313A3, evaluation of an employee, please give a thumbs up or say aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. It passes. So you have a link for that. Chris, we were out at 8:12.
Got it.
Thank you. All right. So we have an action item to authorize the chair to sign the superintendent employment contract.
So moved, Andrew.
Andrew,
Second,
Right.
Sarah.
Sarah. All right, any discussion? All those in favor of authorizing the chair to sign the superintendent employment contract, give a thumbs up, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passed. All right. Public comment. We have some people who hung out. Is there any public comment?
I'd like to take my school board hat off and make a comment as a private citizen.
Dave, can we let Paul go first?
Absolutely.
Paul?
I'm happy to go last.
Thanks to Steve and to Dave and to the committee. I appreciate the important discussion that you've had tonight. I think so that you don't get in a situation where people see an overcommitment, I think it would be valuable to clarify some things. For one, what duration are you committing to keep these 5 schools open? 2, I think you need to clarify that these are goals and not commitments. 3, I think you need to clarify that your intent is or is not to keep these 5 schools open, even if they jeopardize the future of the middle and high schools. 4, I think it'd be useful to clarify the criteria for closing a school. Is it going to be enrollment numbers? Is it going to be not to increase taxes by a certain percent? Is it that the building is falling apart and needs too much money to fix? I think as you go along here, folks in the 5 towns would have a much clearer idea about what it is that you're intending to do. So thank you.
All right. Okay. Any other visitors who wish to make a public comment? Okay. Dave, before you make your comment, I'm going to make the same statement I made to the 2 other board members, that it's not the time for board members to make comments during public comment. You're here at the board table, and that is against the direction of the VSBAs. Board members should not be making comments during public comment period.
So that means you're not recognizing me to make public comment, is that correct?
I'm not. 2 other people have requested this, and I have not allowed them to. So in all fairness, it's not the time for a board member to make a comment.
So I hear what you're saying. What I'm asking is, does that mean you're not recognizing me to give public comment?
Yes, that does mean I'm not recognizing you for public comment.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right, so we'll move down to meeting evaluation. Chris, can you help us with that?
Got it. What is the level of engagement of all board members, high or low?
Aye.
Was the agenda followed, yes or no?
Yes.
Any comments?
Dave, now's your chance.
I do have a comment though, can I? Don, I apologize, and maybe I should call central office, but I cannot make the link that lets us add things to agendas. I can't make it work.
The inclusion link?
Yeah, like I can't put my email in, it won't let me, it's this weird format, and literally like 3 meetings I've been like, oh, I want to add the agenda, but I can't figure it out. And I realize that's on me. So I don't know if anyone else has that experience, but who should I reach out to?
Me.
Okay, so I'll reach out to you, and I'll try to figure out how in the world I can, if I can't do the form, I'll just email you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Alrighty. Does the chair effectively establish the agenda and materials for distribution to the board? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Any comments? Is the chair effective in fostering a professional culture regarding fair and open deliberation, full participation of all members, and ensuring the integrity of the board process? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Any comments? Other feedback for the chair?
I
Well,
have, oh, sorry, Steve.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Oh, thanks. Don, I just want to say I appreciate learning more about the appropriateness of board members being in public comment. It is always an interesting thing to have these multiple hats we kind of wear. So I do appreciate that. And maybe just some education on how to, as a board member, maybe to express certain things in an appropriate way as a board member during meetings. I think that would be helpful. I think that would be nice.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's also within our purview to, if we want to set our meeting up so that there's some time for free board discussion, we could do that as well. I mean, it wouldn't be part of the required public comment period, but we could have at the end, maybe an open 5 minutes of open discussion about whatever's on the board's mind.
So the town of Bristol Select Board has a select board roundtable at the end of the meeting where they, it's designed to bring comments that they have heard from townspeople to the board, if you will. But there is that function within the select board meeting. So,
Right. Then it wouldn't be in conflict with visitors trying to make comments. Right.
And your comment earlier about Dave's opportunity to put that in the board self-assessment feedback was a good, could be used by other people who requested the same thing. There was a place in that to give that comment.
Yeah, I mean, this is how to improve the meeting and how did the meeting go, but we could definitely set aside some time for other discussion.
Yep.
You guys all set?
Sounds
Okay.
like it.
All right. What went well with the meeting?
Relatively short.
I think we gave our community some good feedback.
Right. What suggestions do you have for ways to improve future meetings?
My thought is that we got sort of sidetracked by amendments within, motions and stuff like that. And it would have been helpful just to have discussion first and then sort of go down that roll call of amendments to the original motion. I got really lost and confused and sort of didn't even know what we were talking about by the end. So that'd be my only, something so weighty and meaty, hold amendments to after discussion.
That's it.
Don,
Go
do you
ahead.
need to put that to make those changes for you to Robert's rules? Can we do that as a board?
So I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of what you said.
Can you look into whether we can make those kind of changes to Robert's rules to make it run easier if we agree to that as a board?
Well, I can look into it. Yes.
Yeah, the amendment, because maybe we could really, as a board, decide that that works better for us if we all agree. I think that'd be helpful. Thank you.
And I just want to mention that I don't think Don has to do everything. Like, someone wants that to happen, can they look it to themselves? That's how we used to do it. I don't even know how Don gets any sleep. And I think that we can't just be like, look this up for me, look this up. I mean, that seems like, could someone else do that instead of Dawn? Because she's already got 50 things on her plate, the kind of thing. And I'm not on the board for much longer, so I'm not going to say I'm going to do anything, but if I was, I might. And I just think that I think getting the amount of money she gets, I think it should be an hourly wage job, to be fair. And I somehow on the
Kristen,
board
I
before, we used to
volunteer.
spread things out better. Somehow on the boards before, we used to spread them out better. So I'm not criticizing any individual person. I'm just saying, I don't know how we used to spread it out better, but we did. And I don't know how to
Sure.
get it back to that, but I hope that can happen. And I hope that people that are the chair and vice chair can get paid more somehow, because it sets it up so that only a certain class of people with time and other money can do it, quite frankly. And that's not equitable. So I think the board needs to look at that.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I make a motion to adjourn. Sarah.
Okay,
I'll second, Kevin.
Kevin, all those in favor of adjourning at 8:25, please say aye.
Aye.
Give me a
Aye.
thumbs up. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, good night. See you
Thank
next
you,
week.
everyone. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.